Europa Universalis 5 was released about a month ago, and frankly things have been going significantly worse than how I thought they would be going right now. We're looking at a game that was released in a state in which many of its systems didn't work right, which had UI that really needed some improvement, and yet a game that also was fun, and well, kind of the platonic ideal of a grand strategy game. In my review at the time, I said very clearly that you need to be ready for some pain if you want to love and play EU5 right at launch, is you will be beaten over the head over and over again by bugs, broken systems, and complete imbalances. It was a pretty thought-out warning, at least I thought so at the time. I was of the opinion that it would prepare both you and me enough to enjoy the game, even with all of those issues. Well, the last month went a whole lot worse than I expected, I gotta be honest with you. In this video, I will tell you about the patches the team delivered, the open betas they started, and why all of that is a bit of a train wreck. We'll also take a look about communication in general, and where I am currently at with Europa Universalis 5. But to make it short, my cautious but optimistic warning about how it would probably take more than a year to fix up the game into a state that isn't gonna have you trip over bugs and other nonsense every time you play was probably too optimistic. Right now, I'm really pessimistic about EU5, and I think many in the community have been saying to themselves, I'll be back in 6 months, and I can't actually blame them. This has been a mess. But alright, let's talk about the basics. EU5 is an unbelievably complex and big game. That makes it so that, yeah, bugs are of course going to be common. It is difficult as a developer team to understand what the ifs and buts are that you will encounter as you have a full campaign. This means it's expected, kind of, that the game is going to be somewhat buggy. Now, to tackle that though, and that is pretty clear, at least in my mind, you need a very sophisticated approach. You need to at all times be in control of what your vision for the game is. You need to make sure that you very carefully test what you're implementing so that it doesn't create 15 more bugs and now you've just made more work for you. And I think you need to communicate what you're doing to the community incredibly well. Because if you don't do those things, A, you're going to get a negative reputation where people simply, whenever they see anything that seems counterintuitive, will say, of course, it's just buggy, even if it isn't a bug, but just difficult to understand. But also people will drop your game. Now let's talk about these initial patches. Like I said, this game is incredibly complex and incredibly big, and I called it the most unpolished game, maybe excluding Hearts of Iron 3. That one literally didn't work. That is the only complaint about that review that I think is a valid one. Hearts of Iron 3 was, yeah, what a hellscape. But basically what I'm saying is, it will take them ages to fix this just because of how significantly more complex this game is compared to most other, if not all other, grand strategy launch titles. This means there's a lot more to clean up, and every time you sweep and squish a bug, there are 3 or 4 more new ones. This is exactly what has happened with this game. But what's worse, instead of being incredibly thorough and really keeping track and really testing things incredibly well, we had such a high cadence of initial patches that everything basically got screwed over 24/7. You would just be a normal player, you would come home, you would want to continue your campaign, and we all know that campaigns in this game take a million years, and then you would realize that of course there has been a patch. Now, if you want to sit down and find out what that patch does, well, in the game it doesn't tell you anything. If you take a look at the actual changelog, it is incredibly vague, and even if you take the time to go through script, well, your evening is gone and you aren't actually playing the game. Look, grand strategy games are incredibly niche. You have people that are a lot more dedicated on average than players in other genres. People take more time, they participate in the community discourse, but ultimately they just want to play the damn game. The reality with these initial patches was that this was the exactly wrong strategy for what they should have done, well, in the first month after release. You need to keep things stable after release. People just want to play the game, they want to see how it is, whether they have a good time. Every time they come home and there's a patch that shoots their playthrough in the head, yeah, it's over. Why would they continue jumping in? Now they need to research whether they need to roll back and to which patch they need to roll back. It sucks. This was obviously completely wrong. Not to mention that these initial patches also simply didn't test things all that well. They were pushed out incredibly quickly. I am not debating whether they fixed bugs. I believe that they did, and I know that they did. I'm not debating whether they were testing it. They definitely were. They just weren't doing it enough. We already had this situation in Stellaris earlier this year, and it was horrendous there. They even said, and I quoted this in the past, that, yeah, QA clearly wasn't able to really check through the patches that they were releasing in Stellaris anymore, so they had to stop that high cadence. EU5 hasn't really done this. We just got patches that fixed some things that weren't clear about what they fixed and that very often rebalanced everything. This would of course naturally result in those patches also needing hotfixes, those hotfixes needing hotfixes, and everything just making more and more bugs. Instead of taking a slow and methodic approach to really kind of figuring out individual systems in the game and squashing every single bug that they can find there, they were doing pretty hot coding stuff. So yeah, the initial wave here of EU5 support was bad. That is my opinion at least. Now I'm interested. If you were one of the players that just wanted to play the game, but then all these bugs messed up your playthrough 24/7 and you didn't want to research what exact minuscule thing changed that you now need to reset or what you need to roll back to, if you're one of them, please make yourself known in the comments. Did you stop playing EU5? Are you just waiting for, a good patch? What are you doing? How are you dealing with this? Or are you just powering through? I think inarguably what they did here was the worst possible approach that they could have taken. What needed to be a very thought through and well delivered initial launch month so that people stick with the game was a haphazard approach to fixing bugs while more and more bugs would pop up as they went forward. Now they did learn from this, and I want to bring this up of course. They switched to the model of open betas. Instead of pushing a minor patch directly to the main game and then needing to hotfix it several times, it becomes an opt-in beta. People that play on this patch and experience the bugs, of course, really only see those bugs because they willingly took part in the beta here. Meaning more playthroughs should be safe, right? Running an open beta is also actually incredibly promising because it means that you can get a lot of feedback on what you're doing and, well, you might be able to divert where you were originally going compared to where you end up if you have good player feedback. So things should have gotten significantly better in the patch pacing and the quality of patches once they started the actual program with 1.0.8, right? No. The open beta system for EU5, and I want to be very direct here, is the worst open beta system that I have ever participated in a grand strategy game. Obviously, we have had these throughout the years in several games. Stellaris has been running them, CK3 had one as well for the multiplayer fixes that they did a couple of years back. And then we have Victoria 3, I think most notoriously here, for 1.2 and 1.5, where they ran long-standing betas, got a lot of feedback and implemented it as well. So there's a lot that I can compare this to here. And EU5 is terrible, both in the presentation of the open beta patch, in its dedication to taking in feedback and responding to it, and the general communication of what the plan is going forward. Now, before I go into this and kind of talk about what is being messed up here and why I'm super tilted about it, I really am super tilted about it, just to be clear here, I want to bring up one thing. I don't know why things are going this way. I have no idea, and I don't want to speculate. That's not really my place. All I can say is that when you release a game in November, you basically have until mid-December, because then Christmas holidays come around. Many people in the office or wherever they are will probably be taking a couple of days and weeks off, and then you will come back into the office in January, which means end of December isn't going to be all that productive. Your most productive period was essentially November, and I think they've completely squandered it. So, what is wrong with these open betas? Well, let's take a look at some open betas that were run really well. The Crusader Kings 3 open beta for multiplayer, for example, wasn't about design. They didn't want us to critique how their infrastructure works, they just wanted to have reports. But that still meant that they needed a particular forum section where only this open beta would be able to give feedback, making it so that it's very clear, hey, you're testing this right now, and we know you are testing this right now, meaning whatever you're giving us lets us fix what we're doing right now, rather than this is just a random bug that you discovered 5 versions back. If you are doing an open beta that is really small in its scope, like just changing multiplayer to actually be workable, you can do this, that is completely fine. Victoria 3's 1.2 and 1.5 open betas are great examples for what you should and have to do if you are in a position where you want to do something more wide-ranging. Let me explain to you how the open betas in Victoria 3 went. These open betas were very wide in their scope, a lot of things were to be changed and a lot of things were to be considered. This meant that there needed to be a really big and sophisticated process in taking in a mass wave of feedback, segregated from feedback for the current game, so not the open beta, just the released version, and then actually turning that into something that is in the game. The way the Victoria 3 team handled this was by being incredibly transparent. They released dev diaries exclusively detailing what kind of feature designs they had added to the open beta, what the working as design status was. If you don't know, working as designed literally just means this is the feature as we envision it, and if it works the way that we describe, it is working right. If it is working any other way, it is not working as designed, and that is essentially a bug. They detailed all of this stuff and made it very clear what would be coming. Simultaneously, as they launched the open beta, they also detailed what they knew were issues that were currently in the game. Things that were missing, things that were broken, things that they didn't yet had time to implement. Once the open beta started, they gave us incredibly long changelogs. Every update for the open beta, they gave us incredibly long and detailed changelogs as well, so that we would know what had changed and would know what we could actually evaluate. And then they were in an incredibly work-intensive, and I want to be serious here, this must have been exhausting, an incredibly work-intensive period where both the developers but also the community team was constantly monitoring the feedback forums. This meant you could leave really long feedback and then at the end of the day would be certain that it had been seen, because it literally got something that said has been seen. They took a lot of time to explain the concepts, to talk to the community, to consider what the complaints were, and then implemented it as they went. As far as I know, but maybe I'm wrong about this, I believe also that the community team was incredibly busy detailing what exactly the fan feedback was and turning it into actionable bullet points for the developers. All of this was one of the greatest experiences ever, because it meant that the final result of all of the reworks they were doing came out as polished and as well designed as possible, compared to if they had just worked this on their own time or if they had pushed this out as a normal patch and then had to hotfix 15 times. So, that is how Victoria 3 did it, and I would call this the golden standard for Grand Strategy open betas. It meant we were always in the know what issues we would encounter and we could give valuable feedback. So then how does this compare to the EU5 open beta? Every single overview that they gave us on the changes that they were making in the open beta were incredibly vague, not at all going enough into detail. I have seen the community in the last weeks engage in divination and tea leaf reading to understand what the actual intention of this is. The most notorious change, of course, being centralization and decentralization. It was a massive shift, now making it so that the ideal step at the start of the game is to virtually always go decentralized and go centralized later. Is it good gameplay? Is it good design? What exactly does this simulate? What is the point? We don't know. Okay, maybe they at least provided really detailed changelogs, right? Well, I mean, you already know, of course they did not. The changelogs are incredibly vague. It's super frustrating because what does any of this mean? Is it good? Is it bad? Where is it going? What's the intention behind making these changes? And what even are these changes? I have no idea whatsoever. Alright, but what about feedback? Can we at least give good feedback? Well, it's kind of twofold, right? First of all, we physically cannot give good feedback. I've said this on other platforms as well, other people have said it also. The fact of the matter is, if I don't understand what the working as designed stage of this feature is, how can I possibly say, hey, I like this as a design feature, or I don't like this? I'm not even sure that it's working right. And even if somehow, miraculously, I put in all the work to now understand whether, hey, does the change the economic base, does the current balancing of the military, for example, does all of that make sense on what is the game vision of the developers, where are we headed here? Even if I had all of this, there is no dedicated forum where we are just there so that somebody can collectively gather all of our very concise feedback and deliver it to the developers. We are looking at the Wild West, and it has been incredibly counterproductive. So the result is that the first open beta for EU5 ended, and it didn't exactly feel like there was any significant dialogue between the developers and the community. That's okay, I guess. At the very least, we get more stable patches for the people that literally just play stable patches. But even then, the open beta is relatively useless because we can't really do more than the QA, because we have no idea what the game wants to do with these values. Where are we right now, at the start of December, when it comes to the video game that is called Europa Universalis 5? Well, combat is a bigger mess than ever before, with cavalry regulars being stronger than ever before and wiping out literally everybody. There is no reason other than for fort reinforcement to bring infantry in the first place. Obviously the AI doesn't know about this, and obviously this isn't intended, but combat has been completely screwed for a really long time now, and every time that they try to address it, they added more really confusing modifiers that, quite frankly, I've given up on understanding. All I know currently is that levies are a complete waste of time, which obviously isn't how it should be. We are also still in a state where most of the situations and international organizations that didn't work at launch are still not working right. The Western Schism is incredibly buggy. The Guelphs and Ghibellines also buggy. The Holy Roman Empire is without a doubt in the current open beta in the worst state it has ever been in. They don't even pass the Golden Bull. And to be clear here, they didn't really do much before that either. The AI always just passes the worst option, Holy Roman Figurehead, which supposedly has been fixed, but I couldn't tell you, because it doesn't work right in the open beta. Not to mention, of course, that they all still just vote yes on everything, meaning a player Emperor has a really easy time playing in the HRE. Simultaneously, the Treaty of Tortillas is completely bugged, as it has been since launch. Conquistadors, completely bugged. Trade companies, completely bugged. I don't know what to say, other than that the constant reworks, where we as a community don't even know what the idea of the reworks is, leave all of the bugs still in the game and the reworks not exactly achieving what they needed to achieve. If you're listening to this and you're saying to yourself, wow, he's being incredibly harsh, the answer is yes, I am being incredibly harsh, because at the current pacing, we are not really seeing the improvements that we needed to see to existing gameplay systems on a design level, right? So reworking things like, for example, taxation or the military, but we're also not seeing the bugs that really matter squashed. This game is incredibly buggy, and with the haphazard way of improving it right now, it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about here when it comes to the open betas is that I am also deeply disappointed with how the open beta has handled its feature design. Sure, they don't tell us about it, but even then, the features that are being added, I mean, I don't think I needed to open beta test this for it to become obvious what the issues are, so I feel like I'm constantly just talking about the base issues that should be apparent by the time this feature is designed. A great example for this, and I want to stress here that this is something you will encounter for many of the new features added in the open betas, are the changes made to vassals in the 100 Years' War. They added now an interaction, or rather a decision, that the vassals can choose where they can literally defect. They become, for example, from a French vassal into an English vassal. The ability to do this and the willingness to do this are governed entirely by the subject loyalty and whether they are in Europe. Now, the obvious implication here is, what is that? Because it means that, for example, Wales can now all of a sudden switch over to France. This is completely nonsensical, because this kind of allegiance switching did happen, but it happened with vassals in France, because what they were doing was recognize the King of England as King of France. It shouldn't be happening with anybody else. They already said now to roll this back, but I also have to tell you, I also witnessed vassals that had rivaled England and that hated England say, well, but I'm disloyal to France, I have to switch over to England. And all I can say here is, making this feature should have had this as a consideration. So effectively, we don't even know what exactly the working as designed vision for a feature is, but even if we did, many of these features, quite frankly, need some more consideration before even the very basic implementation, because the flaws are so very obvious. I could give you a ton of lectures of what is going on with these feature designs. Again, the 100 Years' War one is just a great example, but there are so many of them. They have now also, of course, added it so that the AI is hyper-aggressive, and I have to be honest with you, even if, of course, the AI ought to be more aggressive than it currently is in the live patch, you didn't need to release open beta with the current state of the AI, because it was always obvious that it is going to be too aggressive. What do you want me to say about that? How can I feedback that in an open beta? The answer is obviously I can't. This is a waste of time, and I'm just not going to be playing the open beta, because what am I feedbacking? These are the most obvious things that I've ever seen. We need communication. We need open betas that actually explain what they are doing, what the known issues are, so that I don't have to obsess over the known issues, and where this open beta is meant to end up in the full patch that eventually will be released from the open beta into the wild. There are so many underlying bugs, very apparent bugs, that will plague your game no matter what. So many international organizations and situations are deeply broken. We have so many things that simply do not work right. The constant redesigning without even telling us what the redesign is, it's not great. Right now, I don't feel confident that within the next year or 2 years or 3 years, this game is going to be in a genuinely polished state. It is incredibly complex, and this complexity needs to be fully analyzed to fix it. Why are we just constantly rebalancing things when the current balance might just be based on a bug? Without all the bugs being fixed and us knowing that we are in a feature that is working as designed, it is impossible to give balancing advice, because the current balancing might not even be the real one. I have to be honest with you folks, I was really only playing EU5 in the last month in multiplayer with my friends, and even that stopped because we had so many game-breaking bugs that we just moved on to Arc Raiders. I don't know what to tell ya. Now maybe I'm the only one that feels this way, but I have been incredibly frustrated, and I really am feeling like maybe I shouldn't be playing EU5 until, I don't know, March or so, when many of these things then hopefully will have been addressed. Right now, for December and January coming, I can really only hope that they start using open betas as a platform rather than just as a wild testing ground where we don't even know what we are testing. The sophistication of the platform that is an open beta needs to become better. Simultaneously, the communication by the developers is virtually non-existent, which is uncharacteristic for this development team. Again, I have no idea why this is happening the way it is, but it needs to come to an end. Folks, I gotta be honest with you, I don't even know where to start here, because this has been such a mess. This game, being as complex as it is, always needed a very stable platform upon which the devs could stand to evaluate what to change, how to change it, and what kind of bugs were even hindering their true design vision so that they can see whether the vision works. We do not have that platform as it stands. I can only hope that they are going to get it together, because if not, we are going to end up on 1.0.1 million and things will still be insanely buggy. Am I too harsh? Am I just harsh enough? What is your experience with Europa Universalis 5? Let me know in the comments. I will see you later, alligator.